Nehemiah chapter 1 verses 3 and 4 say like this. This is Nehemiah that is speaking. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. Somebody say he wept. For some days I mourned. Somebody say he mourned. He fasted. Somebody say he fasted. And he prayed. Somebody say prayed. Before God in the heavens. So he wept, he mourned, he fasted and prayed. He wept, he mourned, he fasted and prayed. When was the last time you wept, that you mourned, that you fasted, and you prayed for loved ones that were in need? That's what a wounded warrior does. Nehemiah, he's a man of God who appears on the scene during Israel's 70 years of captivity in Babylon. He's a man that appears on the scene at a time when Israel is being held captive by King Artaxerxes. And those of you that have been watching 300 on TNT lately, you see who he is and what he thinks of himself. He is an important man in Babylon, but he's also an important man in the history of God. And I say he's an important man in Babylon because he's the king's cupbearer. His is a story of a man who cared enough to get involved when others were in need. This is a story about a man who cared enough to get involved when others were in need. He is a man who did not look the other way and ignore the plight of his people. He's a man that when he saw his people hurting, he didn't say, that's what they get. He was a man that when he saw his people in need, he didn't just say, primero mis dientes y luego mis parientes. There's a saying in Spanish when people come over to eat that people say, first my teeth and then my relative's teeth. It rhymes in Spanish and it's really cool. In English it just sounds bad. Dientes, parientes, they're close. Sadly, there are not too many Nehemiahs in the world anymore. There's not too many people who will go out of the way for others, much less turn their lives and their families' lives completely upside down to help out someone in need. People just don't seem to care anymore. They just seem like they're just blind to the plight of others. Last year, my wife and I, on an anniversary or some occasion, we went on my motorcycle to Monterey. We stayed the night, and then we went down the Highway 101 and went to San Simeon, stayed there, and then came back to Fresno. Well, halfway down San Simeon, I think it's 16 Mile Point or 8 Mile Point, some point, there's a little cafe. So you pull off the road and you go up this little thing and then you're parked right there in front of the cafe. Well, Annie and I get there and we park up on that cafe and we go inside and we see that a candy bar is $3. And I said, I remember that food from Denny's this morning. I'm going to go get it out of the saddlebag and we're going to eat it over here in these picnic tables. So we went over here and there was these picnic tables and that's where we actually saw the whales coming up out of the water. But before we saw the whales, I dropped my whale. My motorcycle. Remember I told you had to go up like this and then you park? Well, I went backwards like this, and when I went backwards and I turned, the motorcycle just fell over. The tires were up in the air, and the motorcycle was like upside down. And there's all these people there. And they sat there and watched me struggle to try to pick up an 850-pound motorcycle. I even looked around and said, my bad. I'm laying there on my bike, you know, kind of halfway, feet in the air with the tires over here on the side. Help! And I looked over at these Europeans. And they looked at each other and they said, blah, 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 blah. I go, I know tongues, but I can't interpret that. But it sounds like, look at that fool laying on the ground. What a funny way to park. And there was these Asian people, and they were talking like really fast. They were mad that I fell. They looked at each other and said, what are you mad about? They're still mad about World War II. I don't know if you know this, if you go to most tourist type places in America, there's more people from other parts of the world there than Americans because their money is better than our money. And they sat there and nobody helped me. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, what if this was a real emergency? Finally, my wife, who was too embarrassed, she's over there by the picnic table. She waits till those people all laugh at me and go inside, and she comes out and she goes, "What'd you do?" "Oh, I decided to look under my bike. It fell." What do you think happened? Was it just trying to look at the bottom of it? It fell. So my wife and I was lucky that I had put a bunch of shoes in one of the saddlebags, and that created a tipping point for those of you that know geometrical type stuff and engineering type stuff. See, hydraulics kind of. The bike was able to tip over back on its end, and then we got up there. Nothing happened to the bike, but I remember nobody helped. Nobody cared. Nobody bothered to help. Last year, Sister Letitia, who always sits in the back and is not here, you guys know Sister Letitia, who handles, she's the secretary of the church board. She broke down on between Herndon and Bullard on 41. How long do you think she was there before somebody stopped to help her? Her phone was dead. How long do you think she stopped? How long? Just guess.
A couple hours. 2 hours.
4 hours.
She was there 6 hours before the 10th police officer, she counted, drove by, stopped because he saw the lady sitting by the car, standing by the car. I mean, how, that is when she's on her, you guys know she works at Children's Hospital. So she's coming down from Children's Hospital, and she was able to make it to right there to that bulletin. And I remember Ray called me, "Pastor, I'm worried." "What? My wife doesn't come home?" He goes, "It's like 6 o'clock, she got up at 3. And I'm like, "What'd you do?" Come on, how many of you would have said that if Ray called you and everybody raised their hand? Everybody raised their hand. I was like, "What'd you do?" He goes, "No, we're worried." And then I didn't believe him, but Erica called. And at her, I believed that something's going on. And it turned out that finally when the officer came, she was able to use the phone, AAA came or whatever. But how do you stay on that busy? You know at 5 o'clock there was cars going on and nobody stopped. What's happened to people? Is it like they just don't care anymore now? Some of us will just pawn it off by saying, "Oh, it's dangerous helping people. It's dangerous to stop. You know, I'm not going to stop and help somebody because you never know. They might jump me and take my hoopty." They might steal the hubcaps of my car. People they just don't care like they used to. People seem not to care, but Nehemiah did. Look what happened. Nehemiah, in verse 4, I read it to you, it says he sat down and he wept. And for some days he mourned. When he received bad news of his family, he mourned, he wept, he cried. Nehemiah is living large. He's the cupbearer to the king. He is living large. He is the guy who gets to taste all the king's food for him to make sure it's not poison. So, I don't know if you guys remember when we had that whole Pharaoh scene up here, and Daniel was sitting up here in the throne, and his wife and Lydia were up here, and then there was Potiphar and his backstabbing wife, and over here was Joseph the innocent, and then Mario was the cupbearer. Remember how he got to taste the wine and everything? The cupbearer had the most important position in the kingdom because he was the one that was honored enough to taste the king's food. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like anybody drinking from my cup. Somebody drinks from my cup, it's on. I mean, and my kids, backwashing and all, like to drink out of my cup. But, I mean, let's be honest. How many of it bothers you when other people drink out of your cup? Be honest, raise your hand. Yeah. You're not the type to share your soda with somebody. Here, have a drink. Now, I love my wife. But whenever she drinks out of my cups, I have to look at the lipstick. I mean, I don't like lipstick. It's waxy. If she has lipstick, I won't kiss her. I'll just... Yeah, it just gross. Ooh, there's lipstick on here. I don't know where that came from. I heard lipstick was made out of fish guts. You guys didn't know that? No, seriously, you didn't know that? It's made out of fish droppings or something. It's just food coloring. You guys don't have the Discovery Channel, do you? You ain't never gonna discover nothing, I tell you. This guy got to drink out of his cup, and it was an honor, it was a high position. He has a job reserved for the noblest of men. It is unusual for a foreigner to have this job, but Artaxerxes respects Nehemiah. Now, his life was going better than expected. You see, his country was invaded, it was totally destroyed, and he was forcibly carried from Jerusalem, from Israel, all the way to Babylon, where he is now serving to the king. He's a servant to the king now. Everything in his life is going good. He probably doesn't have to worry about much. He gets to stay in the palace. He gets to eat the best of the food. He gets to see the best of the entertainment. When the king travels, he travels. He gets to go. He was probably there when Artaxerxes fought the 300 of Sparta. He's been traveling now. And all of a sudden, he gets this bad news. His life's going absolutely great. Everything is fine. He's living large. When he hears news, your people back home are in disgrace. The walls are not built up. They can't protect themselves. And things are falling apart all around them.